My name is Roddy MacLellan from MacLellan Bagpipes. Grew up in Scotland, obviously, heard bagpipes most of my life. Went to Glasgow School of Art, studied silversmithing, jewellery design, woodwork, metalwork. Moved to the States in 1980, and in 92 was getting married. And my mother's health was very poor, so she was not able to come to the States for the wedding, so we went to Scotland. Got married in Scotland, and my cousin played bagpipes at our wedding. And that stirred some memories for me, having been away from Scotland for so long. I had taken practice chanter lessons when I was a kid, like many kids do. Didn't follow through with it, but it was always there in the background. So when we came back to New York, I got involved with the New York Caledonian Club, and they did have a pipe band, and I thought, well, this would be great for me to get back in touch with that part of my heritage and history. So I started taking lessons from them. And it came to the point where, as you know, after 6 to 8 months in practice chanter, you're ready for a bagpipe. So they sent me to a shop in New York where there was a lady there, and she stocked bagpipes that had been brought in from Scotland. And having a background in craftsmanship, I looked at those and I thought, well, I don't really like how these look. They were very shiny, very plastic looking. I didn't get the quality of the wood or any of those sorts of things. So I thought, well, I'm pretty good at making things. How hard can this be? So I borrowed a set of bagpipes, took measurements from it, and I had access to machine shop and lathes and all that sort of stuff. So really for me to go from silversmithing to making musical instruments was not a huge step. I didn't have all the tooling I needed, but I was able to make the first set, which is what we have on the wall back here. And that was probably 1993, something like that. And, you know, I boldly took them into band practice one week, and they worked. And the teacher of the group there said, wow, you know, Ray, this is pretty impressive. When you said you were going to make a set, we didn't actually believe you. And here we are. So one of the other students said to me, well, you know, rather than buy one of these sets that they brought in, I wouldn't mind getting a set made by you because we're friends and you're local. And that was how this whole thing started. It was purely by accident. It wasn't a lifelong ambition. However, as I started to get more involved in it, I realized it combines the skill set that I had, which was metalwork, making my own tools. There's a certain art history in bagpipes, and if you look at the history, all the makers had their own styles, and that appealed to me. So MacLellan Bagpipes started by accident, but one of the things very quickly was I realized I wanted mine to look different from everyone else's. And that's always been the theme that we've done in the different profiles and the different metalwork that we do. And that's my sort of personal stamp on the whole thing. Internally, the bagpipe has to adhere to certain rules in order for it to function, be stable, have a good sound. So those things, we established that fairly quickly because I had eventually got my grandfather's set of Henderson pipes, and like most pipe makers have done, you measure those, and you know that that's a good starting point. On the outside, the profile doesn't really make a whole lot of difference to the way it sounds. Once you get the inside correct, you can do what you want on the outside. And that was the aspect that appealed to me, whereas most pipe makers adhere to what we call the Army regulation pattern, and that again goes back to when all the makers in Scotland, their biggest client was the Ministry of Defence. And being the military, they want them all to be the same. And so all the makers sort of, where initially they were very diverse in their styles, they sort of combined to all this standard, so everyone sees the 3 drones very square with the imitation ivory mounts. And like I said before, my first thing right from the beginning was, well, I wanted mine to look a little bit different. And I guess that's the artistic background that makes me want to do that. So some of the profiles are inspired by old sets that we've seen that come in for restoration. I'll look at it and say, well, this is unique looking, like the antique edition. That's based on a set that came in. I'd never seen anything like it. And then some of the other profiles might be inspired by someone would say, could you make it look like this? You know, can we do that? The one we do most of is what we call the original profile. And that was because when I made the first set, I didn't actually have a bagpipe in front of me. I had the lengths of the pieces, and I knew basically what they are. But when you're turning by hand, wood turning, sweeping radius moves are easier to make than square moves. And so all the shapes were kind of fluid looking, which is what you see on that set. There's no sharp edges on it. And if you look for inspiration in nature, you will see that on trees, and there's no sharp, straight lines. They're always curves, or always radiuses. And so that, to me, our musical staff is a circle with a line on it. So the idea of having everything to be fluid and smooth looking has just always been, I guess, my style. The real old sets would have been ebony. Again, when you research it, because I did a lot of research once I got into this, it wasn't just, it didn't just arrive by accident. You know, once I'd realized this was something I wanted to do, I did a ton of research on acoustics and on the history of bagpipes and musical instruments, bagpipes specifically. So 18th, 19th century was the heyday of the British Empire. And like most empires, they would go to places and they would take what they wanted, what they felt they could use. So at that time, the heyday of bagpipe making, they were bringing ebony from Africa and from India. They were bringing cocos wood from Jamaica, which unfortunately many of these woods are no longer with us. And so one of the things that any of us now who work in the musical instrument trade have to be responsible in that there are great woods that we can use, but we're also more cognizant of the fact that if we're going to continue to use them, we have to be careful how we harvest them. So we looked into that. The two main woods that we use now are cocobolo, comes from South America, and African blackwood from Africa. Both of those woods are now endangered species, so we had to get permits to import those woods and all those things. And so again, I knew that in Scotland they had used woods other than the ebony and the blackwood, which came in early 20th century. And so we looked for equivalences of some of those woods. And so Mexican ebony has come on the market. There's also a wood called mopani that are great sound tone woods. We use them, they're used for other instruments as well now, clarinets, oboes are made out of these woods. So there are options for us. And then even sustainable materials, the Delrins, the plastics is one of the things we're looking into. Again, thinking about, we can't make everything out of these woods. We can't just keep chopping the trees down. We have to be more careful about it. So options for people that aren't necessarily wood are some of the things that we're working with now. When I had to start getting these permits to import these woods, it suddenly occurred to me, well, you know, what can we do? You know, we want to continue using them, of course, but what can we do to make sure we don't use it all up? So that would be the option of other materials. And so there are bagpipes made of plastic, Delrin. They've been available for a number of years, but they've always, to my ear, sounded somewhat harsh, and that's a factor of the material. You know, as we use the different woods, they all sound a little bit different, and so plastic has its unique tone qualities. And so when we looked into using that, you know, to make more instruments, my biggest concern was the quality of the sound. The material is fantastic to work with, but the quality of the sound was something that we were concerned with. So in the old days, where pipe makers would line the pipes with brass in order to make them more sustainable, so that if the wood cracks or something, they have that brass lining. A lot of those went to the military where they traveled to harsh environments. And so it occurred to me the notion of lining them does have an effect on the sound. So could we do the opposite, is take the harsh material and line it with something that would make it sound smoother? And then again, as you know, right now, many drone reeds that people play are made of synthetic materials. They're not cane anymore like they used to be. So if you follow that concept, you say, well, these materials are giving us a cane-like sound for the drone reeds. Why can't we then utilize that in the bagpipe itself? And so we made a couple of prototype sets up where we put liners in of the cellulose material that the drone reeds are made of, something similar. And I made the first set. It was quite a funny story. Like, I made a set, took it to band practice, and like most bands, you know, you're standing in a circle, someone's going around, he's tuning the drones. And we had a gentleman who would do that every week. And then it started to get to be slightly colder weather. And we were outside, so when he goes around, you can feel the drones, and the wood drones are still kind of warm. And he got to mine because they're plastic on the outside. They were cold. And he said, "Oh, Roddy, your drones are just different." I said, "Well, this is the plastic." And he went, "But that's the set you've been playing for the last 3 months." And I said, yeah, you never knew? He said, "No, I had no idea, you know." And so that was to me, that was the first test, that we would get the quality of the sound from that material, but we were also getting the sustainability of the Delrin exterior. So the sound aspect was taken care of. The other thing with those pipes is that you can travel, you know, to harsh environments, snow, rain, and not have to worry about, is my wood going to crack? Do I need to oil them again? Do I have to, you know, do all these things? So you might just give them a wipe down and dry them out. They're good to go. So that to me was a huge step forward. And then, of course, for many people, you really have to think about, well, do I need an exotic wood bagpipe for the type of playing that I do? That's a question only that person can answer. But I think we've given people that option, that now you don't have to necessarily spend $3,000 on an exotic wood bagpipe when you can get something that will sound almost as good for half the price and know that we're not using up the unsustainable materials to make them. It's been really positive. One of the things that they're really enjoying is the no maintenance, and they're busy people, so they don't want to have to take the pipes apart, swab them out, redo the hemp joints every couple of months. They don't want to deal with that. Like, throw them in the case and go. And a lot of them, border patrol people, they'll be up at the Canadian border one week and down at the Texas border the next week. They're traveling to extremes of temperature and they don't have to be concerned about it. And then also there's the cost factor. They're simply cheaper to purchase than the wood sets, and they're probably not going to have repairs to make, so down the line, that's all positive. And then we have a group up in Canada who play in really, really bad weather, really cold, and the pipes keep playing. Whereas our wood sets are having all sorts of problems with wood expanding, contracting, and pieces getting stuck and joints coming loose. These sets seem not to have any of those issues, so it's been really positive, really excited about that. I think it's important for me because of my background in craftsmanship is that I still am hands-on. And so although we do the Delrin instruments and they're mostly made on the CNC machines, I still maintain the wood line of instruments that we make, and I pretty much make all those by hand. And I like the fact that when it goes out of the shop, that I basically have worked on it, although I have people help me. The wood instruments, ultimately, I will finish and go through the process with all of them. And I'm the one who will talk to the customer and work out what it is that they want. So we have a balance on making the new plastic Delrin type products, but then we still maintain the restorations of the old sets. We have sets that are, 100 years old will come through. And so you still have to be able to say, well, here's this lorry from 1912 that needs to be restored. And my background in restoring silver was that when you restore a piece, you want it to look as if it had never been touched. So we don't take it and make it look brand new. We want it to look like the rest of the set. And I think that's part of the skill set I had coming into this, where some people will take an old set and buff it all off and recomb it and put lacquer on it, make it look brand new. That's not restoring, that's remanufacturing. And so when I get a classic instrument, I want it to go out here still a classic instrument, as its original maker intended it to look and to sound. We recently moved to this new facility here in Zebulon, and part of the push behind that was that I have a skill set that's somewhat unique. And in talking with my good friend Joe Brady, we're talking about what happens, like some of the big bagpipe shop just closed down when Mr. Whomever got too old to do it, would just shut shop. And I said, that was kind of what I was thinking. And Joe was instrumental in the notion that, well, really you should be training people to continue on what you've learned and what you've developed, rather than just like at the end of the day it would stop. So Joe found this facility here, and I've relocated with all the machinery and all my hand tools and everything. And we have a couple of kids in the band who've been coming in, and they want to learn, well, how do you do this? Like, we had an interesting one where we had an old set of pipes to restore, and part was going to recut the beading and combing to make it look original. And so the question is, well, how do you copy what someone else did? So we had to make some tools up. And it was an interesting thing where our kids were like, well, can't we just buy the tool? I said, no, unfortunately you can't. Nobody makes bagpipe making tools, they don't exist. So we needed to cut a piece of steel to match a beading and combing pattern exactly. So I was able to show them how to do that. And so there's a skill set that we're passing on. So I think that's, in that sense, MacLellan Bagpipes is a little bit unique in that, we're trying to not just do what we have to do to earn our living, but set up something where we can continue and have some of the younger kids still learn hand skills that will be lost if we don't do that. Yeah, to me, playing your correct grace notes in the correct part of the beat is important. Having the correct instrument to do that with is also important, and we're innovating with the pipe chanters, with the pitch, moving around. The band's pitch went all the way up, now we're starting to bring it back a little bit, so we have the control over that. So every couple of years we'll redesign the pipe chanters to try and work with what we need in this country. I think, again, one of the things that came up was pipe chanters made in Scotland are designed to give you a specific pitch in that climate, and they do really well. Obviously they work well there, but when you bring that chanter to the States, somewhere like Memphis or Colorado, some of the people out there, and they'll be having all sorts of problems with keeping that pitch under control. And so again, it's like, well, why we bring it from Scotland when we could make it here and make it more specific to the region where you're playing, you need a chanter that's going to be a little bit lower pitched. As the weather warms up, it'll come up and it'll be right where we need it. So those sort of things that we're working on doing more, and that's all happened in the last couple of years by moving the shop and bringing more people involved into the process that we're working on. So the future looks good, yeah.
Hi, my name's Joe Brady, and I'm with Waken District, and I hang out in this bagpipe shop from time to time. I grew up Irish Catholic kid on the south side of Chicago, and you really have two choices. You play the bagpipes or you become a Catholic priest. So I went to seminary, didn't really work out too well. I think I upset my mother, so I started taking lessons with the Stockyard Kilty Band, one of the oldest bands in the city of Chicago. Probably what sticks out with me the most is the people. Pipe band brings people together, so whether those people are police officers, firefighters, guys from Scotland, it's a common thread that ties us together. But in terms of events, if you want an event that is memorable for me, sure, I have a couple. Playing Carnegie Hall with the Emerald Society, standing on stage at Carnegie Hall playing Love Me Tender on the bagpipes, ridiculous. But who else can say they did that? And I did it with the Cops in Kilts, the Chicago Police Band. Another very memorable moment is we were in Monaco, standing in front of the castle of the king, and Prince Albert, not in a can, but Prince Albert up on the stage, and his young Prince Albert child chewing gum and then picking their nose. So just funny things of standing there in that moment in Monaco, and then playing at the church where Grace Kelly's buried, and at the time he was the Vicar General of the church, Pope Benedict. So just really unique moments that if it wasn't for pipe band, that would have never happened. What's interesting, when I first started playing in a public safety pipe band, we were really bad. The bands just all across North America were fairly bad. Now there are exceptions. NYPD has an exceptional program. FDNY has an exceptional program. You saw all these small pipe bands popping up all across the country. Even the police bands in Scotland, you look at Strathclyde Police, maybe they're not all police, or you look at Victoria Police, we're world champions. Very good pipe bands, but here in the United States, just a little bit different of a challenge, and the challenge was instruction. They didn't have instruction, they didn't have proper equipment, they didn't know any better, so they did with what they had. And I see that tide has shifted, that they are investing time in learning the instrument, investing time in the uniform, proper deportment of the uniform, investing time in instruments, getting the right instrument for their organization that's going to fit their needs. There's not enough time in the day. There's simply not enough time. You want to do more and you can't. And the hardest thing for me, the personal toll for me, is saying no. And that sucks, having to tell somebody no, that you can't make a trip to go play a funeral, that you can't be there for a band rehearsal. That's the most difficult part. We only have so much time. I'll point out a couple people that have been inspirational for me for my pipe band life. The first is Dave McKee Sr. from the Chicago Stockyard Kilty Band. He taught me how to play as a child, and came into the band with my wife as well, playing in the Stockyard Kilty. So Dave was just hugely inspirational. A couple other people, Bruce Quintos. I give Bruce a lot of crap sometimes, but he brought me into the Chicago Police Emerald Society, and it's just been looking back at all the things that we did. Elvis on stage, and then the Chicago Police Band, the McGuire, Danny McGuire Jr. and Danny McGuire Sr., father and son, that brought me into the fold there. So just lots of inspirational people, but probably the biggest one that's had an impact on my piping career is when I moved here to North Carolina, and that would be Roddy MacLellan. And just seeing him, his love for this instrument, his love for doing what he does in this tradition, it's awesome. In your words, it's awesome. No other way to describe it. You've been to a funeral for a police officer, a firefighter, or a military soldier, Marine, killed in the line of duty, killed in battle, and you see people get up and speak, and they say all these great words about this person, and what we do, we don't have to say a single word every time, and that's what we remember. They don't know us, we didn't say a single word, but we played music, and that music was a gift in that moment. So with the Shelby County Band and the leadership, they invested in the idea of having a bagpipe band, and that's so important to make that investment. And we wanted to make an investment in turn in your organization because you're doing all the right things. You're teaching the right way. You're investing in the instruments. You're deported. Your uniforms are fantastic. So all those things, you're doing it right so that when called upon, you can play your bagpipes, you can play your drums and honor someone.